Today, on behalf of the CEC, I'd like to introduce two of our founding members on Leveling Up with Esports, Kathryn Rand and Stephen Light, both co-directors for the Institute for the Study of Tribal Gaming Law. So let's get into it. Can you two tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. Well, thanks, Ari and Ben and Allegra and everyone there. We're glad to be a part of this as always. I'm Steve Light, as Ben mentioned, and I'm on the faculty here in Political Science and Public Administration at the University of North Dakota. And I'm also the co-founder, along with Kathryn, of the Institute for the Study of Tribal Gaming Law and Policy. We take a look at all things Indian gaming, the business dimensions, the legal, the regulatory dimensions, and today we'll be glad to be chatting with you about it.
And my name's Kathryn Rand. In addition to my co-director role with Steve at the Institute, I'm a law professor here at the University of North Dakota, and Steve and I are actually both involved in our university's relatively new initiative related to collegiate esports.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool. So, I think we were going to ask you, obviously, we've been stuck in a pandemic and stuck in our homes, and you're still in Minneapolis. As you said, it snowed about 10 days ago, so you're still stuck in cold weather. I hope
we're even further north than that. We're in Grand Forks, North Dakota, so right up on the border, closer to Canada than Minneapolis.
Okay, you're making me cold now. Here's the thing. So what have you guys been up to? I mean, obviously in the lockdown, you're both in, you teach in colleges and university. I guess you've been doing remote, remote classes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested, tell us a little bit about that and how you've been dealing with the pandemic.
Sure, absolutely. So like everyone else, not just across the country, but around the world, we have quickly become more expert at using tools like Zoom and WebEx and things like that. So both Steve and I have been teaching our courses online. I finished up a law school course on Indian gaming law along with our externship course, and Steve's been teaching courses in political science as well. The students have been great. They've been engaged despite the challenges in the shift in circumstances that no one was expecting and no one was asking for.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I too have been teaching a course related to Indian gaming law and policy, and the shift to remote learning and online learning has just reinforced with our students, who are, of course, in that 18 to 22-year-old demographic. They're entirely conversant with this. They're more comfortable with it than a lot of the faculty have been. And actually, our conversations around all things tribal gaming, a lot of that content has shifted toward what's happening in the digital and virtual space. So actually, in some ways, it's an exciting time to think about those issues.
One thing that might be sort of interesting is that because we were both teaching in the area of Indian gaming this semester, we were following the impact of coronavirus on the gambling industry, starting with the closures in Macau. So we were talking with students about that, and students were following that in the news. And I think that because of what the gaming industry was going through, our students actually were more aware of the coronavirus and the pandemic before lots of other folks in our part of the country were.
It's interesting. It's a good segue into the next question, which is, I know in the newspapers you've heard, Native American casinos have been quite hit hard with the pandemic. How do you see them coming out of this, and how long do you think that the recovery would take? Las Vegas is talking about a year now. So the Native American casinos have a long road to get back.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Steve has a few stats about the impacts of the coronavirus and the closures on the tribal gaming industry. But one thing to keep in mind for tribes in particular across the country, but perhaps particularly in areas like ours where it's more rural, the tribal casino is often the most significant source of tribal government revenue. So these tribal casino closures are not just hitting the Indian gaming industry, they're hitting American Indian communities really, really hard.
Yeah, so even in the first couple of weeks of the crisis, the impacts were being felt throughout Indian country. And as Kathryn said, with tribal casinos being a primary source of revenue, but also of jobs, you know, even in the first couple of weeks, the estimates were in the area of $1.5 to $2 billion in lost economic activity across tribal casinos and for tribes. With over $300 million in lost wages. But beyond the economic dimensions, of course, it's just rippling throughout Indian country because of the ways the tribal casinos provide revenue for government operations, for infrastructure, for services, for cultural activities, for emergency healthcare even. So it is a challenge that's being felt throughout Indian country.
Which I think is probably why they've been more aggressive in opening. I've noticed that, you know, they're really moving quickly to try. I think they're probably not sitting on their laurels waiting for the government, since most of them are sovereign nations, I believe, that it seems to me that they're, you know, I've been watching them opening slowly with, you know, it's very, it's a very difficult thing to watch, because you know, every video that I've seen in relation to how they're equipping themselves, how they're putting up, you know, barriers and, you know, walking in certain ways. Masks are mandatory, not mandatory, depending on, you know, the location. But now I understand from what you just said that I see the reasoning why they're, you know, motivated to open faster. That would make sense, because they have a lot of mouths to feed, you know.
Right. There's at least two things that I think are going on. One is as much as states and cities are struggling with the balance between ensuring public safety and public health and supporting the economy, I think tribes are feeling that acutely, just in a very direct way connected to the tribal casino. But the other piece of it too is that tribal casinos, especially in rural areas, they're often the center of the community. They operate literally as a community center. And so having a place where people can gather safely is something that could be very important to an otherwise very rural and spread out community, and helping people make those connections.
Right.
Yeah,
Wow.
we had an earlier talk with Ernest E3 and Ernest Jr. And yeah, I mean, it's quite sombering, the situation in Native America. But I wanted to ask you this. I know that this is a situation where they've been hit very hard. And as you said, also the main casinos have been hit very hard. But let's get into the gambling side of it, the casino side of it. I mean, what can American casinos, Native American casinos, and also regular run casinos in Vegas and such do to prevent such loss for the future? You know, iGaming has been around for 20 years now, a long time, since, you know, the birth of the internet. But there's now another, we're going to get into this, I'll use the word esports, obviously, that is now a new temptation, a new place, a new development. And how do you see that the Native American casinos, as well as regular casinos, building that community, building that base, so that if, God forbid, there's another pandemic and we all have to go back in our homes, that they're still relevant to people even in their homes?
Absolutely. Tribal casinos have been working on how to transcend the bricks and mortar that is the presumption of the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, the federal law that governs tribal casinos, different than the commercial gaming industry. And so there are some additional legal barriers that tribes have to face with regard to iGaming. The Wire Act is a big one, obviously, and the constraints in a reservation as opposed to state boundaries is another. That's one of the reasons that esports, perhaps particularly as both an opportunity related to gaming, but also as a non-gaming amenity, is something that I think that this is a perfect time for tribes to think seriously about.
Yeah, so lots of casinos obviously are currently thinking about, in addition to how to open safely, how to protect the health and safety of patrons and customers, but also how to attract them back. And so tribal casinos fit well within that major question. What the space looks like, how the space is used, how social distancing applies. All of those actually create opportunities for the iGaming space and the esports space, which are, can be literally virtual, as we know, but also there are opportunities for younger patrons and a younger demographic to come back to the casino and to be able to be socially distant, but also to be together. I mean, that's part of the essence of the opportunity with esports, is being together in the same space and in a virtual space at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ben and I have struggled mightily to try to push the entire industry of the casino and gambling space into the 21st century with, everything from virtual reality, augmented reality, and all the other things that go along with starting an esports program. I think the pandemic, and you can maybe add on this, it has really taken us from a point where they were sort of stubborn and not wanting to make that leap to now they've been pushed off the cliff and they're falling. What do we do? What's the next step?
So speaking in terms of the law, there are a few next steps. iGaming and mobile betting aren't necessarily legal in every state. So that's one general issue that casinos are facing. Tribal casinos in particular need to have federal issues resolved, including the Wire Act, and also have the issue of the tribal state compact and the negotiations that go along with that, including revenue sharing. So there are, I think, some things that could be made easier for tribes through the actions, perhaps of the National Indian Gaming Commission, the federal regulatory body, and the actions of states to help tribes transcend, to use this crisis as an opportunity to reinvent tribal casinos and to think about, as Steve said, the next generations of patrons.
Yeah, so Kathryn lays out some of those kind of barriers. Those are in the area of gambling predominantly, and of course we know that esports present an opportunity related to not just the gaming side, but betting and in relation to sports betting as well. But esports also can be completely independent of that, as you well know. So we think actually that for tribes, given those kind of legal and regulatory hoops or barriers, the non-gambling side of esports, the interactive side, the community gathering space side, the chance to bring in younger patrons to do something socially, independently but together, those are huge opportunities and huge upside that esports present for tribes and tribal casinos in particular. There's no better place than a community center with social distancing to bring people together, and esports and e-skill games and that kind of thing can do that.
Mm. Just curious, I mean, esports, as we know, is such a new in industry. It's a new phenomenon in the world, and now it's really gotten. It went from first gear to now fifth gear in a matter of months. Couldn't the Native American casinos based with these strong community bases just say, you know what, we're starting our esports program? And I mean, in other words, what are the federal barriers here that would not allow or interfere with Native America and the Native American casinos implementing an esports program tomorrow?
So if it's not connected to gambling, those barriers diminish greatly, obviously, as Steve said. There are still some structural barriers, including in rural areas of the country like ours, where there might not be as reliable access to Wi-Fi and to the internet, and that includes particularly for some reservation communities. But we think that the idea of esports is a terrific one. As Steve said, it's a non-gaming amenity that tribal casinos could use to leverage their role as a community center. But it also is a natural partnership with tribal colleges and other tribal schools in the community, and to encourage students in thinking about not just video games, but STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math fields. And so leveraging that to improve the lives of the next generation of Native Americans, I think is a fantastic opportunity for tribes and for tribal casinos to be part of the leadership in that effort.
Yeah, well, from where we're coming, we always see esports in segmented. We see it as the entertainment side and like you said, the community side. And then, of course, there's the element for wagering as well, but they're not really 100% connected to each other. They can operate independently from each other. So, there is revenue that can be made even hosting tournaments. It's not an impossible situation. I think that, like Ari said, we've been at this for a long time. The concept of that may have felt okay to some people, but they didn't really understand how they would leverage it. Now they're in a situation where it really is, like you said, taking center stage, because you're very limited to what you can do. And esports or video gaming, as we like to call it, is this enormous field that they can participate in now. I think that the question is how, you guys are sort of more on the inside. I'm sure you're fielding a lot of, questions or issues that are coming up within the Native American casinos, especially, legally. Let's face it right now. I mean, it's very hard to get in front of anybody to speak about anything to change legally at this moment. But as Ari mentioned, there is a lot of things that can be done right now. When we perceive tournaments, we look at them sort of as bingo or a different, I think, I don't know what, maybe you guys know this better, but what's it categorized when there's not, when it's more of like a prize pool situation? And I believe that I know that in New Jersey anyway, when we were running our events there, that wasn't something that it wasn't a bad thing. I mean, it
wasn't against the rules.
Yeah, it wasn't against the rules because, it's the same as any other, you're prizing any other kind of event. It didn't take on the same weight as gambling in whole. It's sort of like this little piece that's aside. So,
right. I think the opportunity to host tournaments and to offer prizes that are based on the skill rather than any gambling is one that would fall entirely outside of the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act or tribal or state laws that have to do with gambling. And that's an opportunity that tribes could leverage immediately.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are nearly 500 tribal casinos across the United States. Any and all of them, we think, should be looking at the possibility of sports wagering and certainly the legalities of that. But purely from the perspective of the market and opportunities within the facility itself, as coronavirus wanes, we hope, looking at ways to bring patrons back, to bring new patrons in. We know it's well established by now that the digital market is an add-on. It's not, it isn't an overlap or purely competitive with your bricks and mortar market. So it's a way to bring in new customers, new patrons. And for any one of those 500 facilities, they don't have to go all in on a Vegas-style sports book in order to have sports wagering. It can look more like a sports bar. Similarly, you can go low stakes for esports. You can host a tournament, as you mentioned, Ben. You can hold an event, a one-time event. You can have just a prize pool for that. And those are ways to get your foot in the door and try out the opportunity and see what patrons come in. Huge food and beverage bumps from these kind of events as well. So we know, for things like the new fan cave style facility at the Link in Las Vegas, food and beverage went up, I think, by 50% as soon as they put that in. So folks are going to be looking for an opportunity to watch the game, maybe put some money down on it. Similarly, we think younger patrons are going to look for an opportunity to get together in a safe way, a convenient way, and to tie it back to tribal casinos, which might be in more rural areas, to get together socially, to have a fun experience together in a safe way as well. And esports presents that opportunity. So it's going low stakes and getting foot in the door, I think, is the opportunity for tribes.
So, okay. So in that situation, if you have any listeners here that are confused and they don't know where to start, well, we're here. If they want to reach out to us, we can help them. But yeah, I would say that would be a fantastic entry point. That's really where we believe it should start. It'll give people the opportunity to actually see and be part of what later can the regulation can start to bend around it. And I think that in that case, most of regulation is driven by need. So once they've embraced this and decided that this is something that will work for them, and people are okay with it and they're happy with it, and it's not going to hurt anyone, and quite frankly, the wagering is going on anyway. Okay, it's sort of, and we've been saying this for a while, but it's sort of like before sports betting was legalized, there was sports betting. Okay, I mean, it wasn't sanctioned by the state or the government, but there was sports betting, and it exists in esports too. Not probably not something that is not going to happen very soon. But I think the first steps are them actually getting comfortable with what it is and running it themselves. And I've always said that the most important thing is just do it. You know what I mean? Like the Nike slogan, it really, you just have to do it. And it's not going to cost them that much. Like you said, Stephen, it really is that place to start. And now is probably the best time to do it, because
I just want to point out one thing. I mean, Ben and I are from New Jersey originally. I have to say that New Jersey's been way ahead of the curve with iGaming, and also now they've taken a few esport betting opportunities and from different loopholes, and they're really moving to put esports wagering on the map. Their iGaming system, or their iGaming product, has actually saved them, because they've been closed since the beginning of March. And everyone's going to be looking at that from the iGaming perspective. But the casinos themselves are, in New Jersey anyway, are starting to do esports betting. They had a couple, there was a League of Legends bet taken at Borgata. What we're in a situation now where I don't think that, like, where do you think esports will land as far as the wagering is concerned after pandemic is over and we're coming back to these to the brick and mortar? How do you see that? Do you think it'll level out, it'll go down, or will it continue at a point where it's at once conventional sports is back in the fray?
So
I'm sorry, before you get into that, because I think that's really great as a setup. I also wanted to know if you've been hearing, some from some of the Native American casinos, and then leading into like sort of the stuff we're already said too, because I'd like to know, we don't hear everything, but you may have heard something in relation to that.
So when all of this happened, we had a period of time when tribes were cautiously entering the legal sports wagering market. Different states were working with tribes to amend compacts as necessary, but we had tribal sports books that were operational not only in Nevada, but New Mexico, New York, and we were expanding beyond that in terms of Missouri, I think, and so forth. So it was growing. Mississippi, thank you. And one of the things that tribes were experiencing in that foray into sports betting is that they were bringing in new customers. So it wasn't that their slot players were like, oh, now you have a sports book, we want to go bet there. They were bringing in entirely new customers. And those customers, as Steve said, were availing themselves of food and beverage, but also the events. And so I think that esports falls into that category, that tribes can learn even from that limited foray into legalized sports betting, that having something new that brings in a new generation of customers, and perhaps something that's family friendly as a under 21 non-gaming amenity where parents can know that their kids have a safe place to be as we wind down through this pandemic. That's a real opportunity. So I think that that's something that's going to continue even as the bricks and mortar operation and the more traditional table games and slots start operating. It's not something that tribes should see as an either or, because you're exactly right. It can be a different kind of customer. But the other thing that I think we're going to see coming out of this pandemic is a much broader range of folks that are comfortable using virtual and distance technology. They're going to be much more comfortable betting on a computer or betting on their mobile phone, or interacting with folks in that way than they were just 2 months ago.
Well, that's I guess a positive for the pandemic, or an outcome of the positive outcome from the pandemic. And when we get into these kinds of situations, we learn from them. And I think moving forward, all casinos are going to have to, in my opinion, I think it should be federally allowed across the country on the federal levels, that the Wire Act should really be abolished, because we have, in Europe, it's, betting on certain things is they check everything that comes through the, through the wire on what's going to be bet on, and whether it's legal or not, and whether, the bookies, of course, want to have the correct statistics and all of that stuff so that they're not losing their shirts. But at the end of the day, what we're talking about when you talk about Native American casinos is that you talk about that community side of it. But at the end of the day, they make quite a lot of money on the gambling side, and we can't forget that aspect of it. So if they had esports betting at this point, they would be sitting pretty at this point, but they don't. And the CEC has been around now. This is our 4th year in September. We've been preaching it all the time, but that's the thing. unfortunately, like I said, they've been thrown off the cliff, and now everyone's falling. And I think collectively, both Native American casinos and the casinos in places like Las Vegas and Atlantic City need to join together and put pressure on the federal government to allow all casinos to have wagering, at least on conventional sports and esports, as well as open up the book and have iGaming instituted as well. So virtual casino should be something that people should be attending. I mean, there's virtual clothing realtors. So you could go online and buy clothes. You can go online and get anything you want. We live online, almost 55%. So why is the casino market, the gambling market, so slow to get there?
But there's a question I wanted to ask you. I mean, because you're on heavily on the legal side. It seems that initially, like Ari mentioned, over 4 years ago, a lot of the problems or things that were questions that people were having were, how do you prevent cheating? And it's going to happen. And they find this one incident somewhere in South America, and all of a sudden, esports can be cheated on. But the reality is that the instance that they found it. And the reason why is because anything you do online is in essence really more secure than most other things because of all of the firewalls put in place, all of the anti-cheat software. There's a lot of things to catch things, and publishers have been using them for years to determine who's playing their games and whether or not they're finding little gaps in them and cheating. For you guys, it actually might be a little easier than some of the other stuff where you had to say, okay, well, regulation wise, we're more worried about the non recognized cheating in more traditional forms of wagering than maybe esports, which already has a built-in system to find that. And I mean, is that something that you feel like we do? I scratch my head every single time and I say, but there's more ways to find cheaters in actual video gaming than there is in somebody who comes up with a magnet for a slot machine, or can figure out how to count cards, or can move around the system in that way.
Or certainly someone who wants to fix a tennis match, right? So you've, of course, articulated the argument for legalization and for regulation. Cheating thrives in an illegal market. The more that we make it a legitimate, legalized market that's supported by state and federal law and tribal law, the more that we can make sure that fair play is instituted.
And look, you guys know this as well as anyone. It's all in the data. So one of the ways that esports or online sports gambling, mobile gambling, do the things you're talking about, Ben, is because the data is there. It's captured. And so if you look at what's happening in New Jersey right now, for example, around online sports betting and the way that it's been thriving, as Ari mentioned, during the crisis, lots of that data is captured right there. So KYC data, data that can be used for audit, compliance, marketing opportunities that come from the data. It's all there. So in some ways, it helps to bring it out into the sunshine, if you will. If you move a lot of your gameplay online, that's absolutely correct. And that's an opportunity for tribes too, because tribes are under tremendous regulatory pressure all the time with in the gaming sphere, with 3 layers of government, often the tribal, the federal, and state governments often involved in regulatory issues and regulatory compliance. Tribes have built robust compliance aspects to their gaming operations, and they're aware also of how important data is. So in some ways, this is another dimension of a huge opportunity for tribes.
Right.
I want to just this is our last question, and then we're going to wrap this up. It's a good question for everybody because of the pandemic. How are Native American casinos now preparing for the ultimate, getting people to come back to feel safe? We've seen, Ben and I have seen some people wearing masks on the floor and giving interviews. I've also read an article about UVC light on slot machines recently, a couple days ago. What else are they doing from the hotel, Native American casinos that have the hotels and the casinos, to the actual casinos themselves that just have the casino floors? How are they going to make people feel like it's okay to come back and they won't get sick?
It's a fantastic question. You probably know that the WINS plan for reopening their properties in Las Vegas has been circulated widely. One of the great things that the WIN and MGM and other folks have done is shared their plans. So tribes are well aware of the kinds of measures that commercial casinos are putting in place, and they are tailoring that for their own space. So masks, obviously, the social distancing and the 6 feet of distance with perhaps every other slot machine dark and that type of thing, all of that is being instituted. I think it's also strongly encouraging tribes to look at other technology pieces that could be useful. The reason that is a tough one for tribes as opposed to, say, MGM, is that tribes have a real incentive to maximize the jobs that are created in the casino. So going to a virtual dealer or diminishing customer service roles because of social distancing is something that tribes need to grapple with in a different way. How do they make sure that those jobs don't just go away? But they're taking into account all of the CDC and other requirements. Tribes, I think, this is certainly true of the gaming industry, but I think tribes feel this very strongly. They want to make sure that they are part of what keeps their community healthy, and they would not want to risk the health of their tribal members or the other folks that come to enjoy their casino properties.
And I think Kathryn's put her finger on something that's a really important balance for a lot of tribes, which is this isn't the casino profits that come in are actually government revenue for tribes, and the jobs that are created are a direct product of casinos and retail facilities, hotel facilities, all the rest. Also are an important byproduct that's sort of baked into the policy goals of Indian gaming itself. But by the same token, at least around 50% or more of the workforce within any given tribal casino is not enrolled tribal members. It's actually, folks from surrounding communities. And so these are huge job creators, these casinos, especially in rural areas. And so even as tribes are balancing the health and safety issues that you asked Kathryn about, that she's referring to, tribes also have to walk the line because they're not interested in reductions in force. They're not interested in efficiencies in the same way as that commercial casinos are. And that is a challenge. So to bring a tribal casino back, provide for the health and safety of patrons, of course, is job one. Job two is to preserve the economic opportunities for both tribal and non-tribal members in the casino. An amenity, again, like a sports bar, a sports book, an esports, an area where an esports event can be, those do require people in addition to technology. And so in some ways, those fit very, very well with the goals of tribal casinos.
Yeah, I'd like to leave the tribes with this information that is 100% accurate. As a matter of fact, when we host tournaments and we run them, we have people that, they're tournament organizers. We have, and and it doesn't really require that much training. You just need a few gamers. Yeah, and almost anybody under the age of 37 is one, and there are people that are over that too. So it does meet that need as well. You know, I think they're going to find that as we go forward, it actually, in some cases, it requires even more, you know, staffing than some other things. If you feel that you want to have it for that, so that makes sense.
In the video gaming industry, we call, when you're trying to better your player with better skins and things, you're leveling up. And that's what we're trying to do here. That's the message. That's why it's called the Level Up with the CEC. I wanted to thank you, Kathryn and Steve, for joining us today.
Yep, thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Let's hope that we can all meet in person in September from the 8th through the 10th in Las Vegas at the Luxor. Hopefully we'll see you there.
We're looking forward to it. And we're big fans of the CEC. We think that you folks are doing a really valuable service for the industry. And we very much appreciate the chance to be part of it.
Yeah, we've really enjoyed being a part of it, and it is exciting to see the industry growing and changing. Look, you know, out of this pandemic, there is opportunity. So hopefully some really exciting things will come out of it.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys.
Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.